That night, they thought they had locked my future with one simple command: no school until I apologized to my brother. I nodded. So calm they believed I was broken. They did not know I had been ready to leave for months. When the golden boy walked downstairs the next morning, he found an empty room, a full scholarship email, and the name of a lawyer my father could not intimidate. My name is Brielle Lawson, and for 17 years, I had been the invisible variable in the Lawson family equation. I was the placeholder, the extra seat at the table, the background noise that occasionally required volume control. But tonight, the volume was turned all the way down. The silence in our dining room was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket that smelled of expensive roast beef and impending doom. My father sat at the head of the table, his posture rigid, cutting his meat with the surgical precision he usually reserved for his corporate hostile takeovers. To his right sat my mother, dabbing at dry eyes with a linen napkin, her face a mask of practiced tragedy, and across from me was Logan, my brother, the golden boy, the sun around which this entire dysfunction orbited. He was slouched in his chair, picking at his potatoes, looking for all the world like a wounded puppy. But I knew better. I could see the tiny, almost imperceptible twitch at the corner of his mouth. He was trying not to smile. I kept my hands folded in my lap, waiting. We all knew why we were here. This was not dinner. This was a sentencing hearing. My father placed his knife and fork down, the silverware clinking softly against the china. The sound was like a gavel striking a block. He cleared his throat, a low rumble that demanded total attention. "Brielle," he began, his voice devoid of any warmth. It was his boardroom voice, the voice that fired people. "Your mother and I have been discussing the incident with Logan. We have discussed your attitude, and we have discussed the consequences." I looked at him, keeping my expression entirely neutral. If I showed anger, I lost. If I showed sadness, I lost. The only winning move was to be a statue. "We cannot allow this behavior to continue," my mother chimed in, her voice trembling with a vibration that felt engineered in a lab. "We are a family. Brielle, families support each other. Families do not attack their own. Look at your brother. Look at what you have done to him." I flicked my gaze to Logan. He offered a quick, flinching look away, as if my very eyesight was a physical blow. It was a masterclass in acting. If the Academy Awards had a category for suburban manipulation, Logan would have a shelf full of gold statues. "I did not attack him," I said, my voice steady. "Enough!" My father slammed his hand on the table. The water in the crystal glasses rippled. "I am done with the lies. I am done with the denials. We have seen the reports. We have heard Logan's side. And frankly, Brielle, your lack of remorse is the most disturbing part of all." He leaned forward, his expensive suit straining slightly at the shoulders. "Here it comes," I thought, the ultimatum. "Until you acknowledge what you have done," my father said, articulating every syllable, "and until you apologize to Logan, publicly, in front of the school assembly on Monday morning, you are suspended from all educational privileges." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said. "We have pulled your funding. I have already drafted the email to the administration stating that you will be taking a leave of absence for personal family reasons. You do not go to school. You do not go to debate club. You do not go anywhere until you stand up on that stage and clear your brother's name." My mother reached out and squeezed Logan's hand. "It is the only way to heal this family. Brielle, you have to humble yourself. You have to learn that you are not the center of the universe." The irony was so sharp it almost drew blood. I looked at Logan. He was watching me now, his eyes bright with triumph. He had won. He had manipulated a situation, got caught, lied about it, and now he had weaponized our parents to destroy my reputation to save his. If I apologized, I admitted guilt I did not have. If I did not apologize, my academic record would have a gaping hole in it right before college applications were due. They thought they had trapped me. They thought they had backed me into a corner where my only option was to kneel. They had no idea that I had been building a door in that corner for 2 years. I looked at the roast beef cooling on my plate. I looked at my mother's fake tears. I looked at my father's arrogant certainty. And then, I let a strange, calm sensation wash over me. It was the feeling of a heavy pack sliding off my shoulders after a 10-mile hike. I picked up my water glass and took a sip. I set it down gently. "Okay," I said. The word hung in the air, simple and devastating. My father blinked. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He had prepared a counter-argument. He had prepared for screaming, for crying, for begging. He had a whole arsenal of threats about taking away my car, my phone, my allowance. He was ready for a war. He was not ready for a surrender. "Okay," he repeated, suspicious. "You want me to stay home until I apologize," I said. "I understand the terms. Okay." "Well," my mother said, looking flustered. She dried a tear that wasn't there. I am glad you are finally being reasonable. Brielle, it takes a big person to admit they are wrong." "I did not admit I was wrong," I corrected her softly. "I said I understood the terms." Logan frowned. He sensed the shift in the air before they did. The predator in him realized the prey wasn't running, which meant the prey might be something else entirely. "So you will do it?" Logan asked, his voice cracking slightly. "You will apologize on Monday?" I stood up. "May I be excused? I have a lot to think about." My father nodded, regaining his composure. He thought he had broken me. He thought the okay was the sound of my spirit snapping. "Go to your room. Reflect on your actions. We will discuss the draft of your apology speech at breakfast tomorrow at 8 in the morning." "Good night," I said. I turned and walked out of the dining room. I did not stomp. I did not run. I walked with the measured pace of a guest leaving a hotel. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. They were probably exchanging looks of satisfaction, congratulating themselves on their parenting skills. Tough love, they would call it. I walked up the stairs, my hand gliding over the polished mahogany banister. The house was beautiful. It was a showroom of upper-middle-class success, and it was a prison. I reached my bedroom door, I opened it, stepped inside, and closed it. I did not slam it. I closed it so softly the latch barely clicked. Then, I exhaled, a long, shaky breath that emptied my lungs completely. Showtime. I moved instantly. There was no time for tears. I had cried all my tears when I was 14 and 15. Now, I only had adrenaline and logistics. I pulled my large suitcase from the back of the closet. It was the gray hardshell one I used for debate tournaments. I laid it open on the bed. I did not pack my whole life. That was a rookie mistake. If you take too much, you look like you are running away. If you take just enough, you look like you are going on a trip, or in my case, disappearing. I packed essentials: 7 pairs of underwear, 5 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of jeans, 3 plain t-shirts, my debate blazer, not because I wanted to wear it, but because it made me look professional, 1 pair of sneakers, 1 pair of boots. I went to the bathroom attached to my room and swept my toiletries into a bag. Toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, hairbrush, basic survival gear. Then came the important part. I went to my desk. I pulled out the bottom drawer. Taped to the underside of the drawer was a manila envelope. I peeled the tape off carefully. This was the stash. This was the proof of existence I had been gathering since I realized that my parents viewed me as property rather than a person. I opened it and checked the contents, counting them off in my head. Birth certificate. I had stolen the original from the family safe 6 months ago and replaced it with a high-quality color photocopy. They had not noticed. Social security card. Same trick. Passport. I had told them I lost mine at school and needed it for a verified ID check, then never gave it back. My bank records. I had a custodial account that my grandmother had opened for me before she died. My parents thought they had control over it, but the terms stated that full access transferred to me upon my 17th birthday. I had turned 17 3 months ago. The first thing I did was transfer every cent to an online bank my parents had never heard of. It wasn't a fortune, about $4,000, but it was freedom money. I checked my laptop. I had already wiped the family cloud connection. My files were backed up on an external drive, which I slipped into the front pocket of the suitcase. I looked around the room, posters of bands I used to like, a stuffed bear on the shelf from a carnival 3 years ago, a photo of me and Logan when we were 10 and 8, before he realized he could trade me in for parental affection. I felt a pang of sadness, sharp and sudden, but it wasn't for the loss of this room. It was grief for the girl who had tried so hard to be good enough to stay in it. I zipped the suitcase. It was heavy, but manageable. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. I had already removed the SIM card my father paid for and replaced it with a prepaid one I had bought at the pharmacy 2 weeks ago. My number was new. My data plan was mine. I opened my messaging app. There was only one contact saved. Marin Cole. Marin was the only person who knew the full extent of the madness inside this house. She was the one who held me when I cried in the school bathroom. She was the one who told me that what was happening to me wasn't normal parenting. It was emotional siege warfare. My thumbs hovered over the screen. I typed 3 words. It is happening. I hit send. Downstairs, I could hear the murmur of the television. My parents were probably watching the news, drinking wine, feeling righteous. Logan was probably texting his friends, bragging about how he had grounded his big sister. They were comfortable. They were secure. They thought tomorrow would be a day of victory. They thought they would wake up at 7 o'clock, call me down to breakfast, and dictate the terms of my humiliation. They thought okay meant I had given up. They did not understand that okay was the sound of a contract being terminated. I looked at the digital clock on my nightstand. 9:30 in the evening. I had 8 hours until sunrise. 8 hours to rest my eyes, steady my heart, and wait for the precise moment to execute the exit strategy I had been planning for 500 days. When the sun came up, they would come into this room expecting a broken daughter. Instead, they were going to find a ghost. The sun had not yet fully risen when the performance began. I was already downstairs, standing in the foyer with my gray suitcase positioned neatly by the front door. I had been up since 5 in the morning, dressed in my dark navy traveling coat and the comfortable boots I had bought with my secret savings. I stood in the shadow of the coat rack, perfectly still, listening to the house wake up. The first sound was the heavy, thudding footsteps of my brother. Logan never walked anywhere. He stomped, assuming the world would simply absorb the impact of his existence. He was heading straight for my bedroom. He did not want to miss the spectacle of my humiliation. He expected to find me red-eyed, weeping into a pillow, or perhaps staring blankly at the wall, broken by the threat of public apology. Above me, I heard my bedroom door fly open. He did not knock. Privacy was a privilege he believed I had forfeited. There was a pause, a silence that lasted exactly 5 seconds. Then, a confused noise. It was a sound halfway between a grunt and a question. I could picture it perfectly. He would be staring at the empty closet. The wire hangers were left clinking together, naked and silver. The shelves were bare, stripped of the books, the knickknacks, and the few framed photos I had owned. The bed was made with military precision. The comforter pulled tight, pillows stacked. It looked less like a teenage girl's bedroom and more like an unoccupied guest room in a sterile model home. The only thing I had left behind was my old laptop, sitting open on the bare desk, plugged into the wall, with the screen brightness turned up to 100%. "What the hell?" Logan's voice carried through the floorboards. Then came the thundering footsteps again, faster this time, running down the hallway toward the stairs. I remained in the shadows of the foyer. I wanted him to reach the kitchen first. "Mom! Dad!" Logan shouted. He sounded frantic, like a child who had lost his favorite toy. "She is gone. Her stuff is gone." I heard the clatter of silverware from the kitchen. My parents were likely enjoying their morning coffee, preparing their speeches for the 8 o'clock sentencing hearing they had scheduled for me. "Calm down. Logan," my father's voice boomed. "What are you talking about? Brielle is in her room." "No, she is not," Logan yelled. I heard him skid on the hardwood floor. "Look, I found this on her desk." This was my cue. I stepped out of the shadows and walked toward the kitchen. The wheels of my suitcase hummed softly against the floor, a low mechanical purr that cut through the sudden silence. I stopped in the doorway. It was a tableau of domestic panic. My mother was clutching her throat, her silk robe gathered tight. My father was half risen from his chair, a piece of toast forgotten in his hand. And Logan was standing at the head of the table, breathing hard, holding my old laptop like it was a bomb he did not know how to defuse. The screen was facing them. On it was the email I had received 48 hours ago. The subject line was bold and impossible to miss. Official acceptance and full scholarship award. Ridgeway Collegiate Academy. "What is this?" my father demanded, squinting at the screen. "Read it," I said. My voice was calm, conversational, as if I were commenting on the weather. My father snatched the laptop from Logan. His eyes scanned the text. I saw his face go through a complex series of contortions. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally, a deep, flushing red of anger. "Ridgeway?" he spat the word out. "This is a boarding school, in Vermont." "It is the best preparatory academy in the Northeast," I corrected him gently, "and if you scroll down to the second paragraph, you will see the financial details." He didn't scroll, he just stared at me. "Full ride," he whispered, reading the bold text despite himself. "Tuition, room, board, and travel stipend covered for 4 years." My mother let out a sharp gasp. "4 years? You are leaving for 4 years?" "I am leaving for good," I said. "The 4 years are just the beginning." Logan looked between our parents and the laptop, his brain struggling to catch up. The narrative had shifted too quickly for him. He was supposed to be the victor today. I was supposed to be the beggar. "She can't go," he stammered, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She is grounded. You said she is suspended until she apologizes to me." "Logan is right," my father said. Finding his footing again, he slammed the laptop shut. "You are not going anywhere. Brielle, you are 17 years old. You are a minor. You live under my roof, and you are subject to my authority. You cannot just sign yourself up for a boarding school across the country without our permission." I smiled. It was a small, cold thing. "Actually, I can—" "Do not test me," my father growled. He started to move around the table, using his physical size to intimidate, a tactic that had worked on me since I was 6. "I will call this school right now and tell them you are mentally unstable. I will tell them you are a runaway. I am 17 years, 11 months, and 2 days old," I recited. "In this state, and under the specific educational emancipation bylaws regarding full scholarship transfers for merit scholars, which I researched quite thoroughly, I am allowed to make educational decisions independent of parental consent if the institution provides full housing and guardianship. Ridgeway has a legal team that specializes in this. They have already filed the transfer of guardianship paperwork with the district court as of 9 this morning." I checked my watch. Or rather, they will file it in exactly 15 minutes, but the courier has already picked up the packet. My father stopped. The legal jargon hit him harder than emotional appeals ever could. He understood contracts, he understood loopholes, and he realized, with dawning horror, that his daughter had out-negotiated him. "You ungrateful little brat," he hissed. "After everything we have done for you, we put a roof over your head, we fed you. And last night, you threatened to take away my education because your son cannot handle the consequences of his own actions," I replied. "The contract has been breached, Dad." "I cut you off," he roared. His face was purple now. "You think you can just walk out? Fine. Hand over your phone. That is my property. I pay the bill." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the sleek, expensive smartphone he had bought me last Christmas. It was the leash he used to track my location, to demand instant replies, to control my social life. I placed it gently on the kitchen island. "Keep it," I said. "I wiped it an hour ago, and this—" I pulled a cheap, black plastic flip phone from my coat pocket. "This is mine, prepaid. Only 3 people have the number, and none of them are in this room." Logan let out a nervous laugh. It sounded like a bark. She is bluffing. Dad, look at her. She is trying to scare us. My mother was shaking her head, tears finally spilling over, but they were tears of shock, not sadness. Brielle, think about what you are doing. You are tearing this family apart. I am simply removing the part you all decided was broken. I said, you should be happy. You wanted me to leave school? I am leaving school. You wanted me to learn my place? I found a place where I actually fit. The car! My father shouted, grasping for another lever to pull. The Honda. That is my car. You are not driving my car to Vermont. I reached into my other pocket and pulled out a set of keys. I dangled them in the air. The metal chimed musically. Actually, Dad, do you remember 3 months ago, when you were complaining about how high your insurance premiums were because I was a high-risk teenage driver on your policy? He froze. He remembered. You transferred the title to my name, I reminded him. You said it was a brilliant financial move to separate my liability from your assets. You made me sign the paperwork at the DMV yourself. You saved $600 a year, and in doing so, you legally gifted me the vehicle. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. Logan looked at our father, waiting for him to pull out a magical solution, a trump card that would put me back in my box. But my father just stood there, staring at the keys in my hand. He had been so focused on saving a few pennies and protecting his precious portfolio that he had handed me the getaway car. My father struggled for words. You calculated all of this. Yes, I said. You sat at dinner last night, my mother whispered. And you said, okay, you knew all of this then? I knew all of this 6 months ago. Mom, I was just waiting for you to give me a reason to push the button. Last night, you gave me a reason. I turned toward the door. I grabbed the handle of my suitcase. Brielle, Logan shouted. He ran around the island, placing himself between me and the hallway. He looked desperate now. If I left, who would he blame for his failures? Who would be the villain in his hero story? You can't go. You have to apologize. The assembly is on Monday. If you don't show up, everyone will know I lied. I stopped and looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw the fear behind the arrogance. I saw the realization that without a scapegoat, he was just a mediocre boy with rich parents. That sounds like a you problem, Logan, I said. I stepped around him. He reached out to grab my arm, but I shifted my weight and moved past him before he could make contact. I did not shove him. I simply flowed around him like water around a stone. I walked to the front door. I opened it. The morning air was crisp and cold. It smelled of wet pavement and freedom. If you walk out that door... My father's voice came from the kitchen, loud and final. Do not bother coming back. You are done here. No money, no support, no family. You are on your own. I paused on the threshold. I did not turn around to look at them. I did not want my last memory of this house to be their angry, confused faces. I wanted my last memory to be the sight of the open road. That is the plan, I said. And then I closed the door behind me. The sound of the latch clicking into place was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I walked to the Honda parked in the driveway, loaded my suitcase into the trunk, and got into the driver's seat. I did not look in the rearview mirror as I backed out. I drove toward the highway, toward the north, toward Ridgeway. I had $40 in my wallet, a tank full of gas, and 4 years of silence ahead of me. I was finally invisible in the way I wanted to be. The miles blurred beneath the tires of the Honda, the asphalt humming a monotonous tune that helped drown out the adrenaline still spiking in my blood. I set the cruise control to exactly 65 miles per hour. I was not going to get pulled over. I was not going to give the universe a single reason to stop me. As the physical distance between me and that house grew, the mental fog began to lift, revealing the jagged edges of the last 72 hours. My parents had called me ungrateful. They had called me stubborn. But the truth was simpler and far more clinical. I was a witness. And in the Lawson household, being a witness to Logan's imperfections was a crime punishable by erasure. It had started on Tuesday afternoon. I was not even near the student parking lot when it happened. I was in the library, 3 buildings away, finishing a calculus problem set. But news in high school travels faster than light, carried on the wings of group chats and snap stories. By the time I packed my bag, my phone was vibrating with the same video clip forwarded by 6 different people. The video was shaky, filmed vertically by a bystander, but the audio was crisp. There was Logan, his face twisted into a snarl I recognized from our childhood arguments, looming over a sophomore named Eli. Eli was a quiet kid, a cello player who drove a rusted sedan that looked like it was held together by duct tape and prayer. "You scratched it!" Logan was screaming, pointing at the pristine bumper of the SUV our father had bought him for his 16th birthday. "You scratched the paint, you idiot!" Eli was backing away, hands raised. "I didn't touch it, Logan. I was just walking past." "Don't lie to me." On the screen, Logan shoved Eli. It wasn't a playful push. It was a violent, 2-handed thrust to the chest. Eli stumbled back, tripping over the concrete parking block. He went down hard, his head cracking against the door of his own rusted car with a sickening thud. The video ended there, cutting to black as the person filming presumably dropped the phone or ran to help. I stared at the screen in the library, my stomach turning over. It wasn't just the violence, it was the entitlement. Logan believed the world was soft, and that he was the hammer. When I was summoned to Principal Vance's office the next morning, I assumed it was for a witness statement about my character, or lack thereof. I did not expect to walk into a masterclass in fiction writing. Logan was sitting in the low chair across from the principal's desk, holding an ice pack to his hand, the hand he had used to shove Eli. He looked tragic. He looked like the victim. "Brielle," Principal Vance said, his voice weary. He was a good man who had been beaten down by too many wealthy parents threatening lawsuits. "Have a seat." I sat. I kept my distance from Logan. "Logan has given us a statement regarding the altercation yesterday," Vance said. "He admits to the physical contact, which is a mandatory 3-day suspension. However, he claims there were mitigating circumstances." I looked at Logan. He refused to meet my eyes. "He claims," Vance continued, looking at a notepad, "that he was in a state of extreme emotional distress because of a verbal altercation he had with you immediately prior to the incident. He states that you followed him to the parking lot, screaming profanities, demeaning him, and goading him into a fight. He claims he snapped under the pressure of your harassment and displaced that anger onto the other student." I felt the air leave the room. It was a lie so bold, so architectural in its construction, that I almost admired it. He was trying to split the blame. If he could paint me as the instigator, the toxic home life narrative would soften his punishment. He wouldn't just be a bully. He would be a troubled youth acting out against domestic stress. "I see," I said. My voice was level. "And did he say what I was wearing?" Logan blinked. "What?" "If I was screaming at you in the parking lot," I said, turning to him, "what was I wearing? Was I wearing my gym clothes, my debate blazer?" "You were wearing that blue hoodie," Logan said quickly. "The ugly one. You were right in my face. Brielle, you wouldn't shut up." I turned back to Principal Vance. "Mr. Vance, could you please pull up the security footage from the North Wing hallway, specifically the camera outside the library, time-stamped between 3 o'clock and 3:15 yesterday afternoon?" Vance hesitated, then typed on his keyboard. A moment later, he turned the monitor around. There I was, on the grainy black and white screen. I was wearing a white sweater, not a blue hoodie. I was sitting at a table in the library glass bowl, clearly visible through the window. I did not move. I did not speak to anyone. I turned a page in my textbook. "That footage covers the entire duration of the incident in the parking lot," I said. "I was on the other side of the campus. I have not spoken to Logan since breakfast yesterday morning." The silence in the office was absolute. Logan's face went through a transformation that was painful to watch. The mask of the victim slipped, revealing the panicked child underneath. He had gambled on my submission. He had gambled that I would be too stunned to defend myself, or that I would cover for him out of some misplaced familial loyalty. Logan stammered. I might have remembered it wrong. Maybe it was a text. Yeah, she texted me. My phone is right here, I said, placing it on the desk. Unlock it, read the logs. Principal Vance didn't need to see the phone. He looked at Logan with a mixture of disappointment and fatigue. Logan, making a false statement to administration is an additional offense. We are moving this from a 3-day suspension to a 10-day suspension with a mandatory disciplinary hearing before the school board. This goes on your permanent record. I walked out of that office vindicated. I thought the truth mattered. I thought that proving I was innocent would be the end of it. I was naive. The real trial happened that night, around the kitchen island. My parents did not ask if I was okay. They did not ask why Logan had lied about me. They came home in a whirlwind of fury, not at Logan, but at the situation. They saw the suspension not as a consequence of violence, but as a stain on the family brand. 10 days. My father paced the kitchen floor, loosened his tie until it hung like a noose around his neck. Do you know what this does to his Ivy League applications? A disciplinary hearing? It is a death sentence for Harvard. We can fix it, my mother said. She was manic, scrolling through her contacts, looking for a lawyer, a donor, anyone who could make this go away. We just need to change the narrative. Then, they both stopped. They both turned to look at me. I was standing by the refrigerator, holding a glass of water. I saw the idea form in their eyes at the exact same moment. It was terrifying how synchronized their dysfunction was. Brielle, my father said. His voice dropped an octave. It became the voice of the reasonable negotiator. You saw what happened in that office today. Mr. Vance likes you. He trusts you. He trusts me because I tell the truth, I said, bracing myself. There is truth, and then there is loyalty, my mother interjected, walking over to place a hand on my shoulder. Her touch felt cold. Logan made a mistake. He is a boy. Boys get aggressive, but he does not deserve to have his entire future ruined over one shove. He cracked a kid's head open. Mom. It was a minor concussion, she snapped, then composed herself. The point is, the school board hearing is on Monday. If the victim drops the complaint, and if the context changes, the suspension goes away. What are you asking me to do? I asked, though I already knew. My father leaned against the counter. We need you to write a letter to the board, and we need you to speak at the assembly on Monday. We need you to say that Logan was protecting you. I stared at him. Protecting me? From what? From the other boy, my father said, improvising the lie on the spot. Say the other boy was harassing you in the parking lot. Say Logan stepped in to defend his sister's honor. Say it got out of hand, but his intentions were noble. You want me to frame an innocent student? I asked, my voice rising. You want me to destroy Eli's reputation? A kid who did nothing but get shoved, just to scrub Logan's record? It is not destroying him, my father scoffed. He is a nobody. He goes to community college at best. A mark on his record means nothing. A mark on Logan's record costs him millions in potential future earnings. No, I said. The word hung there. I had never said it like that before. I had said no to vegetables, or to watching a boring movie. I had never said no to the machine. My mother's face hardened. Excuse me? No, I repeated. I will not lie. I will not ruin that kid's life. And I will not help Logan escape the consequences of being a violent jerk. You are part of this family, my father growled, stepping into my personal space. You consume our food. You live in our house. You spend our money. When we have a problem, you help fix it. Not this time, I said. Then you are the problem, he said. The mask was gone entirely now. There was only the CEO looking at a rebellious employee. If you do not write that letter, and if you do not stand on that stage Monday and apologize for provoking the situation, yes, we are going back to that story. It is easier to sell. Then you are done. Done with what? Everything, he said. School, debate, outings. You are grounded. You are confined to this house. I will pull you out of school until you learn how to be a team player. I will suspend your education myself." "You can't do that," I whispered. "Watch me," he said. "Monday morning, you apologize to Logan for causing him stress, and you tell the board it was your fault, or you do not leave your room." Logan was leaning against the doorframe, watching this unfold. He wasn't crying anymore. He was eating an apple. He took a loud, crunchy bite. "God, Brielle," he said, juice running down his chin. "You always make such a big deal out of everything. Just say the words." That was the sentence that did it. Not my father's threats, not my mother's complicity. It was Logan's boredom, the casual way he demanded my dignity as a snack. I looked at them. I realized, with a clarity that was almost spiritual, that they did not love me. They loved the idea of a daughter who fit in the family portrait, but the moment I stepped out of the frame, I was disposable. "I am going to my room," I said. "You have until Monday to write that speech," my father called after me. I walked upstairs. I entered my room. For the first time in 17 years, I turned the little brass lock on the doorknob. Click. It was a flimsy lock. My father could kick it open in 2 seconds if he wanted to, but it wasn't a physical barrier, it was a mental one. I sat on my bed. My hands were not shaking. My breathing was steady. I looked at the calendar on my wall. It was Friday night. The assembly was Monday morning. I had 48 hours. I pulled my laptop onto my lap. I did not open a Word document to write an apology. I opened my hidden email account. I opened the folder labeled Exit Strategy. I had been accepted to Ridgeway 6 weeks ago. I had just never clicked the Confirm Enrollment button because I was afraid. I was afraid of missing my friends. I was afraid of being alone. I was afraid of being the daughter who ran away. But looking at that locked door, I realized I was already alone. I was already the daughter they didn't want. I moved the cursor to the link that said, "Accept offer and request immediate housing placement." I clicked it. Then I opened the banking tab. I initiated the transfer of the funds. Then I texted Marin. The clock was ticking. I had 2 days to pack a life into a suitcase and dismantle the version of Brielle they thought they owned. The crack in the family foundation hadn't started with Logan's shove in the parking lot. It had started years ago. But that night, listening to Logan laugh at the television downstairs while I sat behind a locked door, the crack finally became a canyon, and I was building a bridge to the other side. The timeline of my incarceration began the moment the lock clicked on Friday night. Downstairs, the house was a minefield of silence and sudden, aggressive noises, a slammed cabinet, the blare of the television. But inside my room, the atmosphere was vibrating with a different kind of energy. I was not sulking, I was mobilizing. My phone buzzed against the duvet. It was late, past 11 at night. The screen illuminated the dark room with a single name, Ms. Ilara Voss. Ms. Voss was the school counselor, a woman who wore oversized cardigans and possessed a terrifyingly sharp intellect that she hid behind a facade of absent-mindedness. She was the only adult in that building who looked at me and saw a person, not just a set of test scores or Logan's sister. I picked up, "Ms. Voss?" Brielle. Her voice was low, devoid of the usual professional cheer. It was the voice of a co-conspirator. "I am calling you from my personal cell, which is strictly against district protocol. So let us pretend this conversation is happening in a psychic dimension." "Okay," I whispered. "I saw the raw footage from the library security camera," she said. "I went into the server room myself after everyone left. You were sitting at table 4. You were reading the bell jar. You did not move for 45 minutes. "I know," I said. Hearing someone else confirm reality felt like oxygen entering a depressurized cabin. "But my parents do not care. They want me to apologize to the board to save Logan." "I figured as much," she sighed, "which is why I made a phone call of my own. Do you remember the conversation we had last semester about Ridgeway Collegiate Academy?" My heart hammered against my ribs. Ridgeway was a myth, a fortress of academic excellence in Vermont, where students debated international policy and didn't have to apologize for being smart. I remember, you said it was a pipe dream. I said it was a long shot, she corrected. But the admissions director owes me a favor from graduate school. They had a last-minute dropout in their junior honors program. A spot opened up yesterday morning, a full scholarship spot. Brielle, the all-in kind, tuition, room, board, travel. I sat up straight. This was the lifeline. This was the door in the wall. I know, I said. I have the application open on my laptop right now. I have been working on it for 2 months, just in case. It is 90% done. There was a pause on the line. I could hear Ms. Voss smiling. Of course you are. You are always 3 steps ahead. What are you missing? A counselor recommendation letter, I said, and the official transcript transfer request. Consider it done, Ms. Voss said, her voice firm. I will write the letter tonight. It will be the strongest piece of writing I have ever produced. I will attach the transcript directly from the school database. Your parents will not even know a request was made until the transfer is complete. But Brielle, the portal for this emergency slot closes on Sunday at noon. You have to submit everything by then. I will, I promised. Good. Brielle, you are not crazy. You are just surrounded by people who are threatened by your sanity. Get that application in. The line went dead. I did not sleep. Sleep was a luxury for people who were not planning an escape. I turned on my desk lamp, angling it down so no light would spill under the door. For the next 14 hours, I ceased to be a teenager and became a frantic archivist of my own life. I needed to prove to a committee of strangers in Vermont that I was worth saving. I emptied my bottom drawer. I scanned every debate trophy certificate, every honor roll citation, every volunteer hour log. The scanner on my printer was too loud, a rhythmic whirring that sounded like a chainsaw in the quiet night. So I built a fort of pillows around it to muffle the sound. Then came the essay. The prompt was simple. Tell us about a time you had to define your own values. I sat there, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. I could have written about the time I organized the community garden. I could have written about tutoring. But I was done with the safe answers. I was done with the polished, pleasing version of Brielle. I began to type. I am currently writing this from inside a locked room in my own home. I wrote, I have been told that my education is a privilege that can be revoked if I do not lie to protect the reputation of my brother, for 17 years. I thought my value was determined by how small I could make myself to accommodate the egos of the people around me. I thought love was a transaction. I achieve, they approve. But today I realize that I am not a commodity. I am a student, and I have a right to learn without having to apologize for existing. I wrote for 3 hours. I poured every ounce of frustration, every silent dinner, every moment of being overlooked into that document. It was not a sob story. It was a declaration of independence. When the sun came up on Saturday morning, I sent the draft to Marin. Marin did not ask questions. She did not ask why I was awake at 6 on a Saturday. Within 10 minutes, I saw her icon appear in the document. We worked in silence on the shared screen. I would see her highlight a sentence and leave a comment. Too passive. Make it sharper. I would type, they threatened to cut my funding. She would reply, good, put that in. Show them the stakes. It was a digital surgery. We cut the fluff. We tightened the arguments. We made sure every comma was a knife point. Marin was the anchor to the world I was leaving behind, steady and reliable, helping me build the raft. By Saturday afternoon, the hunger pains started. I had not eaten since the roast beef dinner the night before. I had a stash of granola bars in my closet, emergency rations I kept for moments when going downstairs felt too dangerous. I ate 2 of them, dry and tasteless, washing them down with warm water from a bottle I had filled in the bathroom sink. I could hear my parents downstairs. They were moving around with aggressive normalcy. I heard the vacuum cleaner. I heard my father on a business call, his voice booming with fake conviviality. They were waiting for me to break. They were waiting for me to come downstairs, hungry and lonely, ready to sign their false confession. They did not know I was currently uploading a PDF of my state debate championship certificate to a server in Vermont. Sunday morning arrived. The deadline was noon. I did a final review. The application was a digital dossier of a girl who was too big for the box she had been placed in. Ms. Voss had uploaded her recommendation at 3 in the morning. I could not see what she wrote, but the file size was massive. I hovered the mouse over the submit button. My hand was trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer electric charge of the moment. This was it. Once I clicked this, I was inviting the world to judge me on my own terms. I clicked. The screen refreshed. A green banner appeared. Application received. Expedited review process initiated. Decisions will be released within 48 hours. I slumped back in my chair. Exhaling a breath I felt like I had been holding since birth. But the adrenaline was still high, and my mind was racing. I needed to check one last thing. In part 1 of my plan, I had secured my own custodial savings. But there was another account, a joint emergency fund my grandmother had set up for both Logan and me when we were babies. It was supposed to be untouchable until we turned 18. But our parents were the trustees. I had never counted on it. But I needed to know the landscape of the battlefield. I logged into the family banking portal. I knew my father's password. He used the same variation of his first company's name for everything. I navigated to the sub-accounts. I found the one labeled Lawson Children Trust. I clicked on the transaction history. My breath hitched. The balance was 0. There was a single transfer made 2 days ago, the same day Logan shoved Eli in the parking lot. Transfer to Halloway & Partners. Legal firm. Amount, $25,000. I stared at the screen. That was our college money. That was the money Grandma had whispered about at Christmas, telling us it was for our dreams. They had drained it, all of it, not just Logan's half, but my half too. They had taken my grandmother's gift and used it to hire a high-powered defense attorney to bully the school board and intimidate a victim, all to save Logan from a 10-day suspension. They had stolen from me to protect him. A cold, hard rage settled in my chest. It was different from the anger I had felt before. This was clarifying. It removed the last shred of guilt I might have felt about leaving. They had not just failed me emotionally, they had robbed me financially. I took a screenshot of the transaction. I saved it to my evidence folder. If they wanted a war, I would bring the receipts. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the manicured lawn of the suburban prison I called home. Monday was coming. They expected an apology. Instead, they were going to get a vacancy. The notification arrived at exactly 6:45 in the morning. I was already awake, sitting on the edge of my bed, fully dressed in my travel clothes. The phone screen lit up, casting a cool, artificial glow on my hands. It was not a text from a friend. It was not a spam email. It was the future, arriving in the form of a push notification from the Ridgeway Collegiate Academy admissions portal. Status update. Decision rendered. I did not hesitate. I swiped the notification open. I bypassed the flashy congratulations banner and went straight to the PDF attachment labeled Financial Aid and Housing Agreement. I needed to see the numbers. I scrolled. Tuition. Covered 100%. Room and board. Covered 100%. Textbooks and technology. Fee. Covered 100%. Travel stipend. 2 round-trip tickets per academic year. It was a full ride, in the truest sense of the term. It was a golden parachute out of a burning plane. I printed the document immediately. The printer hummed in the corner of my room, spitting out 4 pages of liberation. I grabbed the papers, I grabbed my phone, and I walked downstairs to start the war. My parents were already in the kitchen, the smell of coffee masking the toxicity of the atmosphere. Logan was there too, leaning against the counter, looking smug. He thought today was the day he would watch me break. He thought he was about to witness my capitulation. "Good morning," my father said, not looking up from his tablet. "I trust you have your apology speech drafted. We need to leave for the school in 1 hour." I did not answer. I simply walked over to the marble kitchen island and slapped the stack of warm papers down in front of him. The sound was sharp, like a slap. "What is this?" he asked, irritated. "Read it," I said. My father picked up the papers. He scanned the first page. I watched his eyebrows knit together. He flipped to the second page. His face went from annoyed to confused, and then to a shade of red that usually preceded a shouting match. "Ridgeway?" He looked up, his eyes wide. "You applied to Ridgeway?" "I was accepted to Ridgeway," I corrected him. "And as you can see on page 3, I do not need your money to go." My mother snatched the papers from his hand. She read the financial breakdown. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, Brielle, this is a boarding school. In Vermont. You cannot move to Vermont." "I leave today," I said. "Check-in is at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The drive is 6 hours. "You are not going anywhere," my father roared, slamming his hand on the table. "You are 17. You are a minor. I do not give you permission to leave this house, let alone the state." "I do not need your permission," I said, my voice steady, cutting through his volume. "Read paragraph 4. Under the Educational Emancipation for Merit Scholars Clause, the institution assumes temporary guardianship for the duration of the academic term. It is a standard contract for displaced scholars. I signed it digitally 5 minutes ago." Logan pushed himself off the counter. The smugness was gone, replaced by a dawn of panic. He realized that if I left, the spotlight and the scrutiny would turn solely on him. "She is lying, Dad. She is just trying to scare us. You can't just let her walk out. She has to fix my suspension." "Shut up, Logan," my father snapped, but his focus was on me. He stood up, towering over me, using his physical presence to intimidate. "I will call the school. I know people on the board of trustees at half the prep schools on the East Coast. I will tell them you are unstable. I will tell them this is a domestic dispute. I will have this offer rescinded before you even get in the car." "Go ahead," I said, "but be careful what you say. They record their calls." "And I will freeze your assets," he continued, pointing a finger in my face. "You think you are so smart with your little savings account? I am the custodian. I will go to the bank this morning and drain it. You will not have gas money to get to the state line." "I already moved it," I said. He froze. "What?" "My personal savings," I said. "The money from the summer jobs. The money from Grandma. I transferred it all to a secure fintech account under my own name 3 days ago. You have no access." "That is theft," he shouted. "No," I said, leaning in. "Theft is what you did to the Lawson Children Trust 48 hours ago. Theft is taking $25,000 of my college fund to pay for a lawyer to defend Logan's assault charge." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother gasped, looking at my father. Logan looked at the floor. My father looked at me, stunned that I knew. "How dare you spy on me?" he hissed. "I am protecting my future," I said, "since you clearly have no interest in doing so." "Don't let her go, Dad!" Logan yelled, his voice cracking. He moved to block the hallway, his body language aggressive. "Grab her phone. Take her keys. We have to keep her here until the assembly." My mother looked at my father, her eyes pleading. "Gordon, do something. She is out of control. We cannot let her leave like this. It looks bad." "You are staying right here," my father said, moving around the island toward me. "Give me the keys. Brielle, now." I did not back down. I did not run. Instead, I pulled my phone from my pocket. I tapped the screen once. "Mr. Harker?" I said into the device. "You are on speaker." A voice filled the kitchen. It was deep, crisp, and radiated the kind of authority that costs $600 an hour. "Good morning, Brielle," the voice said. "Is this the father?" My father stopped in his tracks. "Who is this?" "My name is Callum Harker," the voice said. "I am the senior legal counsel for the Ridgeway Alumni Network, and I am currently representing Ms. Brielle Lawson in her transition to our institution. You have no right to speak to my daughter, my father blustered, though his confidence was wavering. She is a minor. She is a scholarship recipient under binding contract, Mr. Harker replied. His tone was bored, as if he dealt with tantrum-throwing parents every day. Mr. Lawson, I am recording this interaction for our safety files. I heard your son suggest physical restraint. I heard you threaten financial coercion. I would strongly advise against both. This is a family matter, my father spat. It became a legal matter the moment Ms. Lawson signed her acceptance, Harker said. Interfering with the travel of a federally recognized merit scholar can be construed as custodial interference. Furthermore, Ridgeway has a zero-tolerance policy regarding the harassment of its students. If you attempt to physically stop her, or if you attempt to drain any more assets that legally belong to her, we will file for an emergency protective order within the hour. We have the paperwork drafted. Do you want the local police at your door in 20 minutes? My mother grabbed my father's arm. Gordon, stop, please. We know about the trust fund. Mr. Lawson, Harker added, delivering the final blow. We have the transaction logs. If you do not let her walk out that door right now, we will open an audit into your handling of the children's custodial finances. I imagine the IRS would be very interested in how you are categorizing those legal fees. My father went pale. The mention of the IRS did what no emotional appeal could ever do. It shut him down completely. He looked at the phone, then at me. He looked at the papers on the counter. He realized he was outgunned. He was fighting with shouting and threats. I was fighting with audits and statutes. Fine, he whispered. The word came out like a choke. Go. If you want to ruin your life, go. She is ruining my life, Logan whined. But he stepped aside as I walked toward him. He was terrified of me now. I wasn't just his sister anymore. I was a person who had weaponized the one thing he didn't understand: consequences. Thank you, Mr. Harker, I said to the phone. I am leaving now. We will monitor your GPS until you arrive on campus. Brielle, Harker said. Drive safe. I hung up. I looked at my parents one last time. My mother was weeping into a napkin, mourning the loss of her control. My father was staring at the wall, calculating his losses. Logan was chewing on his thumbnail, looking small and defeated. They were silent. For the first time in my life, the loud, chaotic, demanding noise of the Lawson family had been silenced by a stack of paper and a calm voice on a speakerphone. Goodbye, I said. I picked up my suitcase. The wheels rolled smoothly over the hardwood floor. I walked out the front door and into the morning sun. I did not slam the door. I closed it gently, with a soft click that sounded like the final period at the end of a very long sentence. I pulled the Honda into the student parking lot at 7:45 in the morning. The engine idled for a moment, vibrating through the steering wheel, a stark contrast to the absolute stillness inside my chest. I looked at the rearview mirror. I was wearing my school blazer, the navy blue one with the embroidered crest on the pocket. It felt heavy, like wearing a costume from a play I had already finished performing, but I needed to wear it one last time. I needed to walk through those doors not as a runaway, but as a student concluding her business. I grabbed the manila envelope from the passenger seat. Inside were the hard copies of the transfer orders and the withdrawal forms Mr. Harker had emailed me 10 minutes ago. I stepped out of the car. The air was cold, typical for a Monday morning. The campus was buzzing with the pre-bell chaos of teenagers. As soon as I slammed the car door, heads turned. The sound rippled through the lot like a wave. Is that her? She actually came back. I heard she has to apologize or she gets expelled. I ignored them. I locked my car, and began the long walk toward the main entrance. I kept my head high, my gaze fixed on the double doors. I could see phones coming out. The black rectangles were raised like shields, cameras recording my walk of shame. They wanted a show. They wanted to see the broken girl walking to her execution. I walked past the spot where Logan had shoved Eli. The pavement was clean, as if nothing had ever happened. I pushed through the main doors and entered the hallway. The noise level spiked. It was a cacophony of whispers and giggles. The crowd parted for me, creating a wide aisle down the center of the lockers. It felt biblical, but in the twisted, social hierarchy way of American high schools. And there, standing at the intersection of the main hall and the administration wing, was Logan. He was leaning against a locker, surrounded by his lacrosse friends. He looked like a king holding court. When he saw me, he straightened up. A slow, arrogant smile spread across his face. He had clearly told everyone that I was coming to beg. He had set the stage for his vindication. He stepped into the middle of the hallway, blocking my path. "Well, well," Logan said, his voice loud enough for the back row to hear. "Look who decided to show up. Mom and Dad said you were throwing a tantrum, but I knew you would come to your senses." I stopped 3 feet in front of him. I did not smile. I did not frown. I just looked at him with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a bug. "Move," I said. The chatter in the hallway died instantly. Logan's smile faltered. He expected tears. He expected a trembling lower lip. He did not expect a command. "Excuse me?" He laughed, but it sounded nervous. "You do not get to give orders. Brielle, you are the one who is suspended. You are the one who has to go into that assembly hall in 20 minutes and tell everyone how you lied about me." "I am not going to the assembly," I said, "and I am not speaking to you. I am going to the principal's office." I stepped to the right to go around him. Logan moved to block me again. His face flushed with anger. He was losing the audience. He could feel the confusion radiating from his friends. He needed to reassert dominance. "You are not going anywhere until you admit it," he hissed, dropping the performance and letting the bully surface. He reached out and grabbed my upper arm. His grip was tight, fingers digging into the wool of my blazer. "You are going to listen to me." The contact was a mistake. I did not panic. I did not scream. 2 years ago, I had taken a self-defense seminar at the community center, paid for with my own money, specifically because I lived in a house where boundaries were physical suggestions rather than rules. I rotated my wrist outward, trapped his hand against my chest to leverage the joint, and then stepped sharply backward, twisting my body. It was basic physics. The torque forced his fingers to open against the weakest point of his grip. Logan stumbled forward, his hand flying off my arm. He almost tripped over his own feet, catching himself on a locker door with a loud clang. I stood perfectly still, smoothing the sleeve of my blazer. "Do not touch me," I said. My voice was not loud, but in the silence of the hallway, it sounded like a gunshot. "That is the second time this week you have put your hands on someone who did not want to be touched. Do not make it a habit." A collective gasp went through the crowd. Someone in the back shouted, "Damn!" Logan turned around, his face beet red. He looked ready to charge, but he saw the phones. He saw the recording lights. If he attacked me now, he couldn't spin it. He was trapped in his own spotlight. "You are crazy," he spat. "Dad is going to kill you." "He can try," I said. I turned my back on him and walked toward the administration office. I did not look back. I could feel the energy of the hallway shifting. They weren't laughing at me anymore. They were watching a hierarchy collapse in real time. I pushed open the glass door of the main office. The secretary, Mrs. Gable, looked up over her reading glasses. She looked surprised to see me. "Brielle?" she asked. "Mr. Vance is inside with your parents." "I know," I said. "I am expected." I walked past her desk and opened the heavy wooden door to Principal Vance's office without knocking. It was a crowded room. My parents were sitting in the 2 guest chairs, looking composed and authoritative. My father was holding a coffee cup as if he owned the building. Principal Vance was behind his desk, looking tired. When I walked in, my parents stood up, their faces lit up with relief. They thought the hallway scene meant I had surrendered. They thought I had come to perform the script. "Brielle," my mother exhaled, rushing forward as if to hug me. "Thank goodness. We were just telling Mr. Vance that it was all a misunderstanding and you were ready to make things right." I sidestepped her hug. I walked straight to the desk and placed the manila envelope in front of Principal Vance. "Good morning, Mr. Vance," I said. "I apologize for the interruption. I am here to file my official withdrawal from the district, effective immediately." The room went silent. The air conditioning vent hummed overhead. My father froze. "What did you say?" "These are the transfer documents," I continued, speaking only to the principal. "And this is the formal request for my cumulative records to be sent to Ridgeway Collegiate Academy in Vermont. Mr. Harker, the legal counsel for Ridgeway, has already emailed you the digital copies, but I wanted to deliver the wet signatures personally." Principal Vance picked up the papers. He adjusted his glasses. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. It was the first time I had seen him smile in months. "Ridgeway," he said, looking at the acceptance letter on top. "This is prestigious. Brielle, full scholarship?" "Yes, sir," I said. "Full ride?" "You cannot accept that," my father shouted. Stepping forward, he slammed his hand on the desk, right next to my papers. "I do not consent to this. She is a minor. I am her father." Principal Vance looked up. He did not look intimidated. He looked at my father with the steely gaze of an administrator who had read the bylaws. "Actually, Mr. Lawson," Vance said, his voice calm. "According to the documents Brielle just handed me, and the email I received 10 minutes ago from a very prominent law firm, the Educational Emancipation Clause has been invoked. Since Ridgeway is assuming guardianship for housing and education, and since Brielle is a merit scholar, your consent is technically a courtesy, one that is no longer required." "This is ridiculous," my mother cried. "She is running away. She is abandoning her family." "I am not abandoning anyone," I said, turning to face them. "I am accepting a promotion." Suddenly, the door to the office burst open. Logan stumbled in. He was out of breath, his hair disheveled from the hallway encounter. He looked wild. She embarrassed me," Logan yelled, pointing at me. "She twisted my arm in the hallway. Everyone saw it. You have to stop her. Dad, you have to make her apologize." He looked around the room and saw the papers on the desk. He saw the principal's calm demeanor. He saw our father's purple face, and for the first time, the reality hit him. "She is actually leaving?" Logan whispered. The color drained from his face. "But what about the assembly? What about my suspension?" "If Brielle is no longer a student here," Principal Vance said, interlacing his fingers, "then she has no obligation to speak at any assembly, and since the witness to your altercation is withdrawing, the original evidence stands. Logan, your 10-day suspension begins today, and the school board hearing regarding the assault on Eli will proceed on Thursday, without Brielle's testimony to mitigate it." Logan looked at me. His eyes were wide with horror. He wasn't afraid of the suspension. He was afraid of the truth. He was afraid of facing the world without me as his shield. "You can't do this," Logan stammered. "You can't just leave me here." "I am not leaving you here. Logan," I said softly, "I am leaving you with the consequences you earned." "Brielle," my father warned, his voice low and dangerous, "if you walk out of this office, you are dead to us. Do you hear me? No money, no contact, nothing." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had drained my savings account to save his son's reputation. I looked at the mother who had watched me drown for years and called it swimming. "I know," I said. "That is why I packed everything." I turned back to Principal Vance. "Is there anything else you need from me, sir?" "No. Brielle," Vance said. He stood up and extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was warm and firm. "Good luck in Vermont. They are lucky to have you." "Thank you." I turned around. I walked toward the door. My family stood there like statues in a museum of dysfunction. My mother was crying. My father was shaking with impotent rage. Logan was staring at the floor, defeated. "No one," I said, pausing with my hand on the doorknob, looking back at them one last time. "No one has the right to suspend my future. Not even you." I opened the door and stepped out. The hallway had not cleared. In fact, it was more crowded. Word had spread that something was happening in the main office. Hundreds of students were lingering, pretending to get books from their lockers. When I stepped out, a hush fell over them. They saw my face. They saw that I wasn't crying. They saw that I was holding my head up. Then, to my left, I saw Marin. She was leaning against the trophy case, holding her books. She didn't wave. She didn't scream. She just nodded, a slow, firm nod of acknowledgement. She was witnessing my escape. I nodded back. Then, somewhere in the crowd, someone started clapping. It was slow at first. Then it picked up speed. It wasn't a thunderous ovation. This wasn't a movie, but it was a ripple of applause. A few teachers standing by their doors were smiling. Eli, the boy Logan had shoved, was standing near the exit. He gave me a thumbs up. I walked down the long corridor toward the exit. The sound of the applause faded behind me, replaced by the sound of my boots on the linoleum. I pushed the crash bar of the exit door. Sunlight flooded in, bright and blinding. I stepped out into the fresh air. The door swung shut behind me with a heavy, final thud. It was the sound of a book closing. I walked to my car. I got in. I started the engine. I did not look back at the brick building. I put the car in drive and turned onto the main road, heading toward the interstate ramp. The GPS on my dashboard chirped, "Destination, Ridgeway Collegiate Academy. Arrival in 6 hours and 15 minutes. I turned up the radio. For the first time in 17 years, the song playing felt like it was for me. Vermont tasted like cold iron and pine needles. It was a sharp, clean flavor that filled my lungs as I drove through the wrought iron gates of Ridgeway Collegiate Academy. The campus looked less like a high school and more like a fortress built to protect ancient secrets. The buildings were gray stone, covered in dormant ivy, standing tall against a sky that was a bruised shade of purple. I parked the Honda in the designated student lot. I turned off the engine. The silence that followed was not the heavy, loaded silence of the Lawson dining room. It was a peaceful silence. It was the sound of a blank page waiting to be written on. My first week was a shock to the system, but in the way a plunge into an ice bath is shocking, painful, then invigorating. Ridgeway was strict. The rules were absolute. Curfew was at 10 o'clock. Room inspections were at 8 in the morning. Dress code was enforced with military precision. At home, rules were arbitrary weapons used to enforce a hierarchy. If my father was in a bad mood, the rules changed. If Logan was in trouble, the rules bent. But here, the rules were as solid as the stone walls. They applied to everyone. If the son of a senator was late to class, he got detention. If I was late, I got detention. For the first time in my life, I was living in a fair system, and I thrived. I threw myself into the academic current, swimming harder than I ever had before. I took advanced placement European history, constitutional law, and honors physics. I joined the debate team on my second day, walking into the practice room with my binder of research and a hunger that scared the freshmen. My roommate was a girl named Sarah, a cello prodigy from Chicago who practiced for 4 hours a day and drank black coffee like it was water. On our third night, she looked up from her sheet music and asked me a question that stopped me cold. "So, Brielle," she said, rosin dusting her fingers, "what is your end game? Who do you want to be?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You argue like a prosecutor," she observed, "but you write like a journalist. Who are you trying to become?" I sat there, stunned, at home. The question was always, "Why can't you be more like Logan?" Or, "When will you learn your place?" No one had ever asked me about my endgame. No one had ever assumed I had enough agency to shape my own shape. "I want to be someone who writes the contracts," I said slowly. "Not the person who just signs them." Sarah nodded, accepting this answer as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Cool. Pass me the stapler." That was the social currency at Ridgeway. No one cared about my last name. No one knew about the scandal in the parking lot back in Ohio. They didn't ask, "What does your father do?" They asked, "What do you think about the Supreme Court ruling on privacy?" I found my tribe in the mock trial club. It was a group of 12 students who were just as intense, just as analytical, and just as exhausted as I was. We spent weekends dissecting case law, drinking bad tea in the library until the librarian kicked us out at midnight. 6 weeks into the term, we traveled to Boston for the Northeast Regional Debate Tournament. The topic was Civil Liberties versus National Security. I was the closing speaker for the opposition. I stood at the podium, looking out at the judges. My hands were steady. My voice was clear. I didn't have to apologize for being loud. I didn't have to shrink to let a boy shine. I unleashed a 6-minute rebuttal that dismantled the other team's argument with surgical precision. When I finished, the room was silent for a heartbeat, and then the applause broke out. Real applause, respectful applause. We won first place. When we got back to campus, the results were posted on the bulletin board in the main hall. I stood there for a long time, staring at the typed list. First place, Ridgeway Collegiate Academy. Best speaker, Brielle Lawson. It was just paper and ink, but to me, it was proof. It was empirical evidence that when I was removed from the toxic soil of my family, I could actually grow. I took a picture of the board. I didn't post it on social media. I didn't send it to my parents. I saved it to a private folder on my phone labeled Victories. But while I was building a new foundation, the old one back in Ohio was crumbling. I knew this because Marin was my correspondent from the front lines. She texted me sporadically, usually late at night. Logan got detention again. She wrote 3 weeks after I left. He tried to copy off someone's test in chem. The teacher caught him. He tried to say the girl was showing him her paper. The teacher didn't buy it. 2 weeks later, Logan got kicked off the lacrosse team. He got into a fight with the captain during practice. He threw his helmet. Then, the big one. A month later. The school board hearing didn't go well. Since you weren't there to lie for him, Eli's parents pushed for maximum penalty. Logan is on academic probation. If he slips up one more time, he is expelled. I read these messages with a strange sense of detachment. It was like reading news about a natural disaster in a country I had never visited. I felt a vague sense of pity, but no responsibility. The chaos at home explained the sudden change in my phone's activity. For the first week, my parents had been silent. They were punishing me with the silent treatment, expecting me to break and call them begging for money or forgiveness. When I didn't call, and when they realized the bank accounts were truly out of their reach, the silence turned into aggression. My father left voicemails threatening legal action. He threatened to sue Ridgeway. He threatened to report the car stolen. Mr. Harker, the school's lawyer, handled it all. He sent a single cease and desist letter regarding the car, attaching the title transfer document my father had signed. The threats stopped. Then came the bargaining. It started on a Tuesday night in November. I was in the library, outlining a history paper. My phone buzzed. Incoming call, Mom. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later. Incoming call, Dad. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the text messages. They popped up on my screen, desperate bubbles of blue. Brielle, please pick up. We need to talk. Your brother is having a hard time. He needs his sister. We are willing to discuss an allowance increase if you come home for Thanksgiving. This family is falling apart. You are the only one who can fix this. I stared at the last message. You are the only one who can fix this. For years, that sentence would have been a command. It would have triggered a reflex in me to jump, to smooth things over, to absorb the damage so they could remain perfect. But I looked around the library. I saw Sarah studying her cello scores. I saw the debate trophy sitting on the shelf in the corner. I saw the stack of books I was actually excited to read. I realized they didn't miss me. They missed the buffer. They missed the sponge that soaked up their dysfunction. They were calling because the house of cards was falling down, and they needed someone to hold it up. I did not reply. I did not block them, either. That would have been an emotional reaction. Instead, I simply silenced the thread. I moved their messages to a folder labeled Archive. I was learning the most powerful lesson Ridgeway had to offer, and it wasn't in a textbook. I was learning how to say no. Not a loud, screaming no, but a quiet, indifferent no. The kind of no that is simply a lack of yes. I put my phone face down on the table. I picked up my pen. I had an essay to write about the French Revolution, and for the first time in my life, I was more interested in the history of a fallen monarchy than the drama of my own family. My life was mine now, and I was too busy living it to go back and clean up their mess. Time is a strange architect. It builds walls between people, but it also builds bridges to new versions of yourself. 6 years passed not in a blur, but in a series of calculated, deliberate steps. I did not just survive Ridgeway, I conquered it. I graduated valedictorian, a title that would have earned me a shiny new car from my father if I were still playing by his rules. Instead, it earned me a full academic scholarship to Georgetown University. I spent 4 years in Washington, D.M.O.C., studying political science and economics. I did not take a single penny from the Lawson family. I worked at the university library shelving books until 2 in the morning. I ate ramen noodles more often than I care to admit. I learned the specific, gritty texture of independence. It was exhausting, but it was mine. By the time I was 23, the girl who had been locked in her bedroom was gone. In her place was a junior policy analyst for the Northbridge Civic Lab. Northbridge was a think tank, the kind of place where the coffee was strong and the people were terrifyingly smart. We drafted policy recommendations for urban development and equitable housing. It was not glamorous work. It was 70-hour weeks staring at spreadsheets and zoning laws, but the paycheck was real. For the first time in my life, I had a surplus. I used that surplus to buy a condo. It was not a mansion like the one I grew up in. It was a one-bedroom unit on the 4th floor of a brick building in a quiet neighborhood. The floors were slightly uneven, and the radiator hissed like a pissed-off snake in the winter. But when I sat at the closing table, the notary handed the pen to me. "Just sign here, Ms. Lawson," she had said. I signed. My hand did not shake. There was no cosigner, no father looming over my shoulder to tell me I owed him. I owned the walls, the floor, and the air inside. To celebrate, I did not throw a party. I went to the local animal shelter. I found him in the 3rd cage on the left. He was a mix of everything. Some shepherd, some terrier, a lot of chaos. He had one ear that stood up and one that flopped down, and he looked at me with soulful, brown eyes that seemed to say, "I have seen some things, too." I named him Beacon. Beacon was my first real family. He did not care about my job title. He did not care if I was pretty or smart. He just wanted to sleep on my feet while I worked late, and he wanted me to throw the tennis ball until my arm fell off. He was the lamp in the window, the signal that I was home. But even as I built this fortress of peace, the signals from the old world kept coming through. Myron Cole was still the transmission line. She had stayed in Ohio, gone to the state university, and was now working as a graphic designer. We met for coffee whenever she came to D.C. for conferences, but mostly we texted. Her updates on the Lawson family were like reading a tragedy in installments. Year 2. Logan had dropped out of his first college after a semester of partying on Dad's dime. Year 3. Mom and Dad were seeing a marriage counselor. Apparently, without a common enemy to unite against. They had turned on each other. Year 4. Logan got a DUI. Dad paid a fortune to hush it up, but it cost him his reputation at the country club. I read these updates with a clinical detachment. It was validation of my hypothesis. I was never the problem. I was the structural integrity. When I left, the roof caved in. Then, about 6 months into my job at Northbridge, the silence from the family was broken directly. It started with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, B, it's Logan. New number. Long time no see." I was sitting in a meeting about municipal tax codes when it came through. I stared at it. I did not reply. 2 days later. "Look, I know you're prob busy. Mom says you're in D.C. That's cool. I'm actually thinking of coming out there. Maybe looking for some opportunities in politics." Dad cut me off again. Long story. He's being a psycho. "Could I crash on your couch for a week? Just while I get set up." I almost laughed out loud in the middle of the conference room. The audacity was breathtaking. After 6 years of silence, after the lies, after the hallway ambush, he thought he could just slide back into my life because he needed a couch. He still believed that his needs were the center of the universe. He still thought I was the supporting character whose job was to facilitate his plotline. I deleted the thread without replying. But Logan's sudden financial desperation triggered an instinct in me. My job at Northbridge was literally to follow the money. I spent my days tracking funding streams and auditing public records. If Logan was broke, and if my father was cutting him off, that meant the financial landscape back home was shifting. One rainy Tuesday evening, with Beacon snoring at my feet, I decided to do a little personal research. I wasn't looking for contact. I was looking for insurance. I logged into the public property records for the county in Ohio where my parents lived. I wanted to see if they had refinanced the house. It was a matter of curiosity, really. I pulled up the deed history for 42 Oak Creek Drive. There were the standard entries, the original purchase 20 years ago, a refinance in 2008. And then I saw a new entry. It was dated 2 years ago. Quitclaim deed and transfer of beneficiary interest. I frowned. A quitclaim deed usually meant moving property between family members or into a trust. I clicked on the digital copy of the document. It cost me $5 to download the PDF. I opened it. The document detailed the transfer of a secondary property, a small vacation cottage on the lake that my grandmother had left to the family, into a holding company called L&G Ventures. I scrolled down to the signature page. My heart stopped. The coffee mug in my hand tilted, dangerously close to spilling. There, on the line marked Beneficiary 2, was a signature. Brielle Lawson. I zoomed in. The loops were perfect. The slant of the B was identical to how I signed my name when I was 16. It was a masterful copy. But it was impossible. The document was dated August 14th, 2 years ago. On August 14th of that year, I was in London on a study abroad program. I had the passport stamps to prove it. I was 3,000 miles away from Ohio. I had never seen this document. I had never agreed to transfer my share of Grandma's cottage, which I technically owned a quarter of under her will, to a shell company controlled by my father. They had forged my signature. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the monitor illuminating my face. The shock washed over me, cold and sharp. This wasn't just bad parenting anymore. This wasn't just emotional abuse. This was a felony. They had needed to sell or leverage that cottage, likely to cover debts, or perhaps to pay for another one of Logan's legal disasters. But because my name was on the original trust deed from Grandma, they needed my permission. Instead of asking me, they had simply decided I didn't exist enough to matter. They stole my name. I looked at Beacon. He twitched in his sleep, chasing a dream rabbit. "They messed up, buddy," I whispered to him. My father, the great businessman, the man who prided himself on control, had made a fatal error. He assumed I was still the scared little girl who didn't understand paperwork. He assumed I wouldn't notice. He didn't know he was forging the signature of a woman who analyzed fraud for a living. I did not call the police. Not yet. That would be messy. And my father would have lawyers who could argue it was a mistake, or a clerical error, or that I had given verbal consent. No, I needed more. I spent the next 3 weeks in stealth mode. I used my resources at work to look into L&G Ventures. It was a sloppy LLC. I found the bank records associated with it because they had used the property as collateral for a business loan, a loan that was currently 90 days past due. The picture became clear. My parents were not just fighting. They were drowning. They had liquidated my college fund years ago. Now they had liquidated the vacation home. And they had done it by committing fraud against their own daughter. I compiled everything. The flight records proving I was in London, the signature comparison, the loan documents. I printed it all out and placed it in a red folder. I called a colleague of mine, a ferocious litigator named Sarah, my old roommate from Ridgeway, who had gone to Harvard Law and was now eating corporate defendants for breakfast in New York. "Hey," I said when she picked up. "Hypothetically, If someone forged a signature on a deed transfer involving a trust asset crossing state lines, that is federal, right? Wire fraud and forgery, Sarah said instantly. Her voice sharpened. Who did this? I will send you the file, I said. Don't file anything yet. Just keep it ready. Brielle, Sarah warned. If this is who I think it is, you know you have them by the throat. This is prison time. I know, I said. I am not going to send them to prison. I am going to do something much more permanent. I hung up. I put the red folder in my safe, right next to the deed to my apartment. I went back to my life. I walked Beacon. I went to work. I dated a nice guy named Mark, who worked in environmental protection. I laughed with my friends. But I knew the storm was coming. I could feel it in the air. My parents were running out of money, and Logan was running out of chances. Eventually, they would come for me. They would come looking for the one resource they hadn't tapped yet, my competence. And when they did, I wouldn't be meeting them with an apology. I would be meeting them with the red folder. 6 years of silence had bought me peace, but the next conversation was going to buy me justice. The invasion happened on a Tuesday, the kind of gray, unremarkable afternoon that usually signals nothing more than a slow commute home. I was walking through the marble lobby of my building, scrolling through an email on my phone, when the doorman, Ralph, cleared his throat. Ralph was a former Marine who usually greeted me with a nod and a smile. Today, he looked uncomfortable. Ms. Lawson, he said. His voice dropped to a murmur. You have guests. I stopped. My stomach gave a single, violent lurch, a phantom reflex from a life I thought I had amputated. I looked toward the seating area near the elevators. They were there. My father was wearing a suit, but it fit him differently than I remembered. It hung looser on his frame, the fabric looking slightly tired, lacking the crisp, expensive sheen of the garments he used to wear like armor. My mother was sitting next to him, her hands clasped so tightly around her purse that her knuckles were white, and Logan was pacing, checking his reflection in the glass panel of the wall, adjusting a tie that was too wide for current fashion. They looked like ghosts who had aged. They spotted me. My mother stood up instantly, a smile plastering itself onto her face. It was a terrifying expression, strained and desperate, like a crack in a windshield. Brielle, she called out, her voice echoing in the quiet lobby. Oh, thank goodness. We have been waiting for 2 hours. I did not move toward them. I stood my ground near the security desk. How did you get this address? Family always finds a way, my father said, stepping forward. He tried to project his old authority, but his eyes darted around the room, assessing the security cameras, the doorman, the locked glass doors. He was nervous. We just want to talk. Brielle, it has been 6 years. Your mother. She misses you. We are not doing this here, I said coldly. I saw Logan turn toward me. He looked heavier, his face puffy, the golden boy shine dulled by years of mediocrity and cheap beer. Come on, B, Logan said, shoving his hands in his pockets. Don't make a scene. We just need a minute. I looked at Ralph. If they try to go up the elevators, call the police. Understood. Ms. Lawson, Ralph said, crossing his arms. I turned back to my parents. There is a coffee shop in the hotel across the street. It is public. It has cameras. I will give you 20 minutes. If you are not there in 5, I'm going upstairs and blocking you again. I turned and walked out before they could answer. I needed the walk across the street to text Sarah. They are here, I typed. Initiate Protocol A. Sarah replied instantly. I am 2 blocks away. Keep them talking. Do not sign anything. I sat at a table in the center of the hotel atrium. It was an open space, filled with the low hum of business meetings and clinking porcelain. I placed my phone face down on the table, recording app running. They arrived 3 minutes later. They pulled out chairs and sat down, creating a circle of tension that felt suffocating. You look... Well, my mother started, her eyes scanning my tailored blazer, my expensive watch. She was assessing my value. City life suits you. 20 minutes, I said, checking the time. Start talking. My father cleared his throat. He leaned in, lowering his voice. Look, Brielle, we know we didn't end things on the best terms. We were hard on you. We admit that. But we are a family, and families help each other when things get complicated. What kind of complicated? I asked. It is a business matter, my father said, waving his hand dismissively. Just a liquidity issue, temporary, but there is a snag with some assets. A clerical error. A clerical error, I repeated. It is about the lake cottage, Logan blurted out. He couldn't help himself. He was impatient, his leg bouncing under the table. The bank is being a total pain about the title. They are freezing the sale. My father shot Logan a withering look, but the damage was done. The cottage? I asked, feigning ignorance. I thought Grandma left that in a trust for all of us. Right, exactly, my mother said, leaning forward, her hand reaching for mine. I pulled my hand back. She flinched. We need to sell it. Brielle, to consolidate some debts. The market is high. It is the smart move. But the title company found an old clause that requires all beneficiaries to sign off on the transfer to the holding company we set up a few years ago. The holding company, I said slowly. LNG Ventures? My father froze. His eyes locked onto mine. How do you know that name? I do research for a living, Dad, I said. So, let me get this straight. You transferred the cottage to LNG Ventures 2 years ago. You used that property as collateral to take out a loan for $200,000, a business loan. It was an investment, my father said quickly, sweat beading on his upper lip. It was for me. Logan interrupted. I had this startup idea, a crypto trading platform. It was going to be huge, but the market crashed. It wasn't my fault. So you took out a loan against property you didn't fully own, I said. And now the loan is in default. The bank is trying to seize the cottage, but when they went to foreclose, they realized the original transfer deed, the one that moved the cottage from the trust to the LLC, was shaky. It is just a signature, my father hissed. We just need you to sign a quit-claim deed, backdated, just to clarify your intent to transfer. Once you sign it, the bank releases the hold. We sell the cottage, pay off the loan, and we walk away with $100,000 in equity. Everyone wins. And if I don't sign? Then the bank seizes the house, Logan said angrily, and they sue Dad for fraud because of the paperwork. You have to sign it. Brielle, you can't let Dad go to jail over a paperwork mistake. I looked at them. They were asking me to retroactively bless a crime they had committed against me. They weren't here because they loved me. They were here because I was the only thing standing between them and a felony indictment. It wasn't a mistake, I said. My voice was quiet, deadly calm. I saw the deed, Dad. I reached into my bag. I did not pull out the red folder yet. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a photocopy of the signature page from the deed transfer dated August 14th. I slid it across the table. That is my name, I said. But that is not my signature. My mother looked away. My father stared at the paper, his jaw working. I was in London that week, I continued. I have the flight records. I have the passport stamps. I did not sign this. You forged my signature to steal my inheritance, leveraged it to fund Logan's failed gambling habit. Let us call crypto what it is. And now that you are caught, you want me to cover for you. It was for the family, my father snapped, his voice rising. People at nearby tables turned to look. You were gone. You abandoned us. You had no right to that property anyway. We paid the taxes on it for years. You stole from me, I said. Again. Oh, get over yourself. Logan slammed his hand on the table. You have a fancy job. You have money. Why do you care about some stupid cottage? Just sign the damn paper. Brielle, you owe us. We raised you. I owe you nothing, I said. I paid for my own education. I bought my own home. I built a life specifically to get away from people who think love is a debt collection agency. You ungrateful little, my father started, leaning over the table, his face turning that familiar, dangerous shade of purple. You listen to me. You are going to sign that paper. If you don't, I will make your life a living hell. I will contact your employer. I will sue you for elder neglect. I will drag your name through the mud until you lose that precious job. Is that a threat, Mr. Lawson? The voice came from behind him. My father whipped around. Sarah stood there. She was wearing a charcoal gray suit that cost more than my father's car. She held a leather briefcase in one hand and a phone in the other. Who are you? My father demanded. I am Sarah Jenkins, she said, stepping up to the table. I am Brielle's attorney, and you are currently screaming threats at my client in a public place while under active recording. My father looked at the phone on the table. He paled. This is entrapment, he whispered. This is a meeting you requested, Sarah corrected. Now, I have heard you admit to forgery. I have heard you admit to bank fraud, and I have heard you attempt to extort my client. Logan looked like he was going to be sick. Dad, what is happening? Sit down, I said to my father. He sat. He looked smaller now. The bluster was gone, replaced by the terrified realization that he had walked into a trap. Here is the situation, I said, leaning forward. I have the evidence. I have the timeline. I have the forged deed. I could go to the FBI today. You would go to prison for wire fraud. Mom would likely be charged as an accomplice. And Logan, well, Logan would have to find a real job because there would be no money left to bail him out. My mother began to cry. Real tears this time. Tears of terror. Brielle, please, he is your father. Do not destroy us. I am not the one who destroyed this family. Mom, I said, you did that when you decided one child was a prince and the other was a spare part. I stood up. I picked up the photocopy of the forgery. However, I said, I do not want to spend the next 2 years in court. I do not want your names in the papers associated with mine. I want to be done. What do you want? My father asked, his voice hoarse. I have a counter-proposal, I said. A legal agreement. If you sign it, I will not report the fraud. I will sign a quitclaim deed that validates the sale of the cottage, allowing you to pay off the bank and avoid foreclosure. We will sign it, Logan said instantly. Where is it? Not here, I said. I want to do this properly. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, at Sarah's office downtown. Bring your IDs. Bring every document you have related to the trust. And then we are good? My father asked, looking suspicious but desperate. You save the house? I save you from prison, I corrected. Do not confuse mercy with agreement. I looked at Logan. And Logan? Wear a better tie. You look like a defendant. I nodded to Sarah. We turned and walked out of the hotel lobby. Behind me, I could hear them arguing, their voices low and panicked. They thought they had won. They thought they had bullied me into a corner where my only choice was to save them to save myself. They thought I was going to sign the deed and let them walk away with the money. They had no idea what I was actually going to put in front of them tomorrow morning. I walked out into the cool evening air. I took a deep breath. The trap was sprung. Tomorrow, I would check it. The conference room at Sarah's firm was designed to intimidate. It was a glass box suspended 40 floors above the city, filled with light, cold air, and a table long enough to land a small plane on. I arrived at exactly 8:55 in the morning. I wore a black turtleneck and tailored gray trousers. No jewelry, no makeup. I was not there to impress them. I was there to erase them. My parents and Logan were already seated. They had brought a thick file of papers, the quitclaim deed they wanted me to sign to cover up their fraud. They looked tired, but there was a spark of hope in their eyes. They believed that by showing up, by agreeing to this meeting, I had already capitulated. They thought guilt had finally done its heavy work. Sarah sat at the head of the table, her face unreadable. A stenographer sat in the corner, fingers hovering over a keypad. A video camera on a tripod blinked a steady red light in the corner. Good morning, I said, taking the seat opposite my father. Brielle, my father said, He tried to sound magnanimous, like a king welcoming a prodigal subject. He slid a document across the polished mahogany. "We have the papers ready. Just sign where the yellow tag is, and we can put this ugly business behind us. We can go get lunch after. There is a nice Italian place around the corner." I looked at the document. It was the backdated deed transfer for the cottage. It was a lie on paper. I did not pick up the pen. "I am not signing that," I said. The air left the room. My father's smile faltered. "We had a deal, you said." "I said I had a counter-proposal," I corrected him. "I never said I would sign your version of history." I nodded to Sarah. She opened her briefcase and slid a different red folder across the table. It landed in front of my father with a heavy thud. "What is this?" Logan asked. Leaning forward, he looked hungover, his eyes bloodshot. "Open it," I said. My father flipped the folder open. He stared at the first page. It was a legal document dated 6 years ago, the same week I left for Ridgeway. "You see," I began, my voice steady and low, "when you drained the Lawson Children Trust to pay for Logan's defense lawyer, you made a tactical error. You assumed that because you were the trustees, you had absolute power, but you didn't read Grandma's fine print." My mother looked up, confused. "What are you talking about?" "Grandma knew you," I said. "She knew you were bad with money, so she included a fiduciary malfeasance clause in the original trust structure. It stated that if any trustee misappropriated funds for non-educational or non-medical purposes, like, say, hiring a criminal defense attorney for a child who assaulted a peer, the trust would automatically dissolve, and the remaining assets would transfer immediately to the ownership of the aggrieved beneficiary." I pointed to the document. "When I left for Ridgeway, Ms. Voss and Mr. Harker filed the paperwork. You were too busy trying to ruin my reputation to notice the certified mail warnings. By default, you forfeited your control." I leaned in. "I didn't just inherit the remaining cash. Dad, I inherited the controlling interest in the lake cottage. That house has been legally mine for 6 years. My father went pale. His hands shook as he held the paper. That is impossible." "It is recorded in the county clerk's office," Sarah interjected, her voice sharp. "Which means when you forged Brielle's signature 2 years ago to transfer the title to your shell company, you didn't just commit forgery, you sold property that did not belong to you. That is grand larceny and real estate fraud on a federal level." "So," I continued, "I am not here to help you fix a clerical error. I am here to decide whether or not to send you to federal prison." Logan stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "This is bullshit. You tricked us. You let us think we owned it." "I let you live in your own delusion," I said. "Just like you let yourself believe you were the victim when you cracked Eli's head open." "You owe me," Logan screamed, his face twisting into the ugly, entitled mask I remembered so well. "You have everything. You have the money, the job, the life. You owe me this. I am your brother." There it was, the core truth. He did not regret the fraud. He did not regret the bullying. He simply believed that my existence was a resource to be mined for his benefit. "I owe you nothing," I said. "I paid my debts the day I walked out of that house." My mother reached across the table, tears streaming down her face. "Brielle, please, we will lose everything. The bank will take our house. Your father could go to jail. Please, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable," I said. "I am offering you a lifeline, but it comes with a price." Sarah slid a second document across the table. It was thick, bound in blue paper. "This is a legally binding settlement and no-contact agreement," I said. "Here are the terms. 1. I will retroactively validate the sale of the cottage. You keep the money from the sale. You pay off your debts. You stay out of jail." My father looked at the document, hope warring with humiliation. 2, I continued, my voice hardening. "You will never contact me again. No phone calls, no emails, no showing up at my lobby, no messages to my friends. If you or Logan come within 500 feet of me, or if you mention my name in any public forum, the agreement is void, and I file the fraud charges immediately." "You want to disown us?" my mother whispered. I am formalizing what you did to me 6 years ago, I said. You suspended me from the family. Now, I am making the expulsion permanent. I won't sign it, Logan spat. I am not letting you control me. Then get ready for the indictment, Sarah said, checking her watch. We can have the FBI here in 20 minutes. My father looked at Logan. Shut up, Logan? Dad. I said shut up, my father roared. He grabbed the pen. His hand was shaking. But he knew the game was over. He looked at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes, only the cold, hard realization that the asset he had tried to break had become unbreakable. You are cold, he said. We raised a cold woman. I learned from the best, I replied. He signed. He shoved the paper to my mother. She signed, weeping softly. Then he shoved it to Logan. Logan looked at me with pure hatred. I hate you, he whispered. I don't think about you at all, I said. He signed. Sarah took the papers. She checked the signatures. She stamped them. Done. I stood up. I felt light, weightless, as if the last tether to the earth had been severed. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. I didn't offer a handshake. I didn't say goodbye. There was nothing left to say. I turned my back on them and walked toward the glass doors. Brielle, my mother called out, one last desperate attempt to pull me back into the script. What do we tell people? What do we tell the family? I stopped. I didn't turn around. I looked at my reflection in the glass door, a woman standing tall, independent, and free. Tell them whatever you want, I said. I won't be listening. I pushed the door open. The sounds of the city rushed in to meet me. Sirens, traffic, the hum of millions of people living their lives. My parents had tried to suspend my life until I apologized. They wanted me to pause, to kneel, to wait for their permission to exist. So I chose my future, and I chose it permanently. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a long journey for Brielle, but she finally found her freedom. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening on your commute, at the gym, or maybe relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and if you enjoyed this story of justice and resilience, please subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this video reach more people who need to hear that it is okay to choose yourself. See you in the next story.